Hey, Tom Bartels from GrowFoodWell.com, and today I'll be talking about harvesting fresh carrots in the middle of winter. Now, I've got about 3,000 carrots in the snow here behind me. They're buried under about 2 feet of mulch with some shade cloth on the top. I can show you that in a second, and the steps that you can go through yourself to have wonderful sweet carrots all winter long. Now, in the Garden Club workshops, we talk about all kinds of ways to preserve and protect food over the winter by drying it, freezing it, fermenting it, or putting it in the root cellar. And many people actually do use the root cellar for carrots. They pack them in sand, but I think personally that's a lot of labor. So doing it this way is far easier, and I'm going to show you the steps in just a second. But carrots, basically what they do is they're a biennial vegetable, so they want the second year growth to go to seed. So while that root is underground, and that top has been snapped off it in the fall, it's just basically hibernating. When it gets cold, it protects its cell structure by changing its carbohydrates into simple sugars, and that makes the carrot sweeter over time. So what we're doing here is using that propensity of carrots to protect themselves by becoming sweeter and making sure they don't freeze. And simply by mulching that bed and keeping it cold but not freezing, we allow that carrot to go through its natural process, but it never quite freezes. And now if a carrot freezes underground, it eventually just turns to mush, it loses its flavor, it's no good. So what you want to do is make sure there's enough mulch to keep it from freezing all winter long, and the more snow that lands on top of it, the better, because that just adds more insulation. So I'm going to walk back here. We're going to pull up maybe 20 or 30 pounds of carrots, which is what I do every few weeks, and then I have more carrots for the next period of time, and I just simply dig them up as I need them. There's about 3,000 carrots behind me here, and so you can have several hundred pounds of carrots in one bed just waiting all winter for you to walk out in the snow, harvest them as you need them, and go about your business. Now, these are very, very efficient techniques, so that it requires very little labor to make this happen, and it's low cost. When you're planting these seeds yourself and saving some of these carrots, which I will do, I will let some of the ones that I have planted on the north end of the bed go to seed this following spring, and then I will be harvesting those seeds to plant the following year. Then all these carrots, these hundreds of pounds of carrots, are free. And that's what we try to teach in Grow Food Well, is to get you to allow that full natural cycle and bring your costs down, bring your food value up. And this is just another example of the food you grow in your own backyard is usually the best tasting, highest nutrition food that you can eat. So let's go check out the winter carrots. I put this hose, I just wrapped an empty hose, 2 of them actually, in loops on the top of this bed, because before the snow landed, we were pretty windy around here. So to help keep the shade cloth down, I just lay a hose over the top, and that keeps it from fluttering. And then once the snow falls, it does the rest. So you can just pull this up back to wherever you're gonna harvest that day. And there's a couple ways to do this. You can, in the beginning of the process in the fall, once you snap the leaves and the stems off these carrots, what I did was put 2 feet of mulch, pretty dense leaf mulch on there, and then I have the shade cloth on top. Now you could use a tarp or just about anything to hold your leaves down. It's really not essential. If you put enough depth of mulch on here, you don't need the shade cloth. If you want to hold it down with hoses or something else, that's usually just fine. I want to warn people that if they only use maybe a foot or less of mulch, the carrots will probably freeze depending on your winter ambient temperatures. But in my case, for more than a decade, this has worked great. 2 feet of mulch covered with leaf, a tarp or some shade cloth, and away you go. So I'm just going to pull this back just to expose the front end of that pile. Now you can see the compressed leaf mulch here, and all I'm going to do is go to my last marker and find the beginning of the row, and there it is. So you can see where that line of carrots stopped. I stopped harvesting right about there. So this is the next carrot. And they come right out. They're pretty cold and hard and stiff, but they're not frozen. It's a really good, fresh, sweet carrot. So there's another example. So I have about 3,000 of these from this winter in the ground. I've harvested several hundred since fall, and I have several hundred to go. So it's just a good example of what these carrots can look like, and they're perfectly good. They're actually better now than they were in the fall. It's just a great example. No matter how many carrots you leave underground, it's a great example of having really good, fresh, sweet vegetables midwinter that are preserved for you without any electricity or any extra labor on your part. Now all I'm going to do to close this up is bring some of those leaves back. Keep that soil covered near the edge of the pile so that it doesn't start freezing from the edge toward the center. And you create like a buffer right at the edge. Then I simply bunch up the remaining shade cloth, drop the hose over it, then it won't blow around. And if you really want to hold it down, just take some of that snow and put it right on top. And then don't forget to put your marker in right where you left off, so that next time, if this is under another foot or two of snow, you can still tell where things ended up. So one key component to carrots, of course, is to get them to this maturity or this size. You need to have good soil, and you need to prepare that soil so the carrots aren't fighting compacted soil on the way down, and then you don't get all these side breakage and splitting carrots. So that's the first thing. And if you have trouble germinating carrots, which is actually pretty common, I have another video on YouTube called A Better Way to Grow Carrots, and it shows a cornstarch germination method that gets you about 90+% germination rate, so you can successfully grow carrots. And once they germinate and they start growing leaves, carrots are really easy to grow. So when you're planting carrots this coming spring, plant some extra ones, maybe a whole bed extra, so that you get more carrots than you can eat in the fall, which is a good thing. So you can come back, snap the tops off them, fill the mulch on top of that bed, pretty thick, like 2 feet, and then get some shade cloth, put the landscaping pins in there to hold it down, maybe throw a hose on top to keep any wind from blowing it around. And then once it snows, you can come out here and each week through the winter come get sweeter and sweeter carrots. And right about late January is when they hit their peak sugar content. So right now, these are the best carrots of the year. So use those two methods, and do try to get some sweet winter carrots. There's really nothing like it. That's it for today. Now get out there and grow some carrots.